For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with low-penetrating
Hello, and welcome to the Snowbrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a professional mountain guide, an Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of Snowbrains, and I want to apologize to all of you for missing some podcasts this season. I had someone very important in my family pass away recently, and I've not been myself. I've been off, I've been sad, I've not been okay, and I decided to give myself some extra space to work through this. So I want to say thank you so very much for listening to our podcast, and thank you so very much for your understanding. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Brian Head Resort. Lift tickets are as low as $29 at Brian Head Resort, located in Southeastern Utah. You'll also enjoy a free $10 resort credit on select dates. Use your Corduroy Cash on resort restaurants, snow tubing, ski lessons, and much more. While supplies last, get $29 lift tickets with a bonus $10 Corduroy Cash, only at brianhead.com. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by 11.8. Not ready to compromise on quality, fit, or function? 11.8 ski gear is designed by athletes for athletes to feel like a second skin, infinitely comfortable to ski in, dependable, and protective when nature shows its harshest side. Technical ski gear that allows you to discover the mountain without compromising. Designed and developed in Åre, Sweden. Discover this year's collection at 11.8.com. My guest today is Errol Kerr. Errol represented Jamaica as a skier in the Winter Olympics. How cool is that? Errol is a World Cup and Olympic skier who competed in ski cross at the 2010 Vancouver Winter Olympic Games. Errol also went to the X Games 5 times. He's been in 2 Warren Miller ski movies, and Errol is currently on the cover of Ski magazine, and he's the very first person of color on any major North American ski publication. That's pretty impressive. Learning how Errol made his transition from alpine ski racer on the US ski team to skier cross racer on the Jamaican ski team is absolutely fascinating. Hello, Errol. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you, man?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me on today.
I know. I love you. Just came off the hill. How many days have you skied this year?
I started December 11th, and today was day 59.
So you do keep track?
Well, just because of modern technology, going through the turnstiles every day, every time your pass is scanned, it's a day counted. So without that, I would not keep track because every day is just a fun day and they all kind of blend together.
Nice, man. Well, today I want to jump into, really dig into your experience at the Olympics in 2010, your skier cross, you're skiing for Warren Miller, and I'd love to talk about diversity in the ski industry with you. We're going to start with a quick and dirty life story. This is a new edition. Can you please tell us your quick and dirty life story? Basically your life story in about 2 minutes.
All right. Well, we have to start from the beginning. Obviously, my mom. My mom graduated Stanford as an English major. After that, she's born in 48, so she's a flower child. So she ended up traveling the world for a while. Ran out of money in Jamaica, was hitchhiking, and my dad picked her up on the side of the road. They ended up getting married. She lived there for 10 years, raised his kids, cooked food over the open fire, eventually moved the whole family up to Brooklyn, New York. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And then we moved out and I was raised with my grandparents in the Bay Area. My grandfather was president of the board at Sugar Bowl for about 10 years. There's a run there called Fuller's Folly. That's where I was introduced to the sport of skiing. And then from there, moved on to the Squaw Valley ski team when I was 10, came through that program, spent some time on the US ski team, culminating at the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver, where I finished 9th place in ski cross, which is the highest finish ever for a Caribbean athlete. Competed in X Games 5 times, finished 5th there twice. And besides that, just all around love and passion for the sport of skiing. It's really made me who I am.
Thank you for that. That was fantastic. And I love that your parents met hitchhiking in Jamaica. I love the happen chance of life. Well, let's jump into the rapid fire. Thanks again for that. So we'll just start, we'll rattle through these. How many days do you ski per year?
Well, that really varies. Back when I was racing and really training, I would ski upwards of 200 days a year. I
Whoa.
would say that now that, I'm just doing this recreational and then at Palisades Tahoe, I take guided groups around. I average about 70 days a year. Obviously, this year I'm going to blow right through that. It'll probably be around 100.
What's your biggest accomplishment in skiing?
Other than getting ninth place in the Winter Olympics, I mean, that means you're the ninth fastest skier in the world that day. My biggest accomplishments, I would say, are coming now, sharing my passion and love for the sport and introducing people to terrain that I've grown up on and just seeing the smile and joy that an accomplishment they get after skiing some of it.
What's your biggest accomplishment in life?
Just living life to its fullest, like no regrets and always moving forward, always knowing that I would say my biggest accomplishment is always being able to look forward and knowing that your best days are yet to come.
How do you define yourself?
I would say sport is a big way that I've defined myself. I think people either define themselves by their career or by their sport or their passion or love for something. So for me, I would define myself as a sports enthusiast.
I love that. Nice, man. Where's your favorite place to ski?
Well, obviously, Palisades Tahoe.
And if you had to pick your favorite mountain ranges, what might they be?
Well, obviously the Sierra Nevadas. Favorite mountain ranges. I mean, I think they all offer so many different things. So you'd have to just go back to like Warren Miller, be like anywhere where there's snow and the lifts are running, is your favorite place to ski. So I think each mountain range offers a different experience. So you can't really just cap it at one. The conditions are always different at different mountain ranges. So it's like, where are the conditions good right now would definitely be the best mountain range to ski.
I like that. What would you do if you couldn't ski? You weren't injured or anything, but some reason you couldn't ski.
Well, I've picked up golf, so I'd definitely golf.
Now, and tell me more about your golfing.
Well, right now I'm sitting here I built a full swing simulator in my garage. It's my new passion. I get season passes. I've played 6 days a week the past 2 summers. And I think just from all the years of ski racing and training and the amount of focus and just small, minute muscle movements that really separate you from the rest of the pack. And, so many people would always say, oh, you're just so naturally talented. And I'm like, no, I just try so much harder than everybody else. I train so much harder. And I really love applying that to golf. So every day when I finish, guiding people around Palisades Tahoe, I've made it a point to come home and I hit 100 balls. I don't want to hit more than that. I don't want to hurt myself or overtrain, but just, that repetition, it's the father of learning.
100 balls a day, even in the winter. I love it. And you're doing it with a ferocious goggle tan. I love that so much. What scares you the most in the mountains?
Oh, definitely the mountain itself, the conditions. I mean, every day is different and you have to respect it. I think that now we have such a push into the mountains, and I think we, as a whole, have kind of lost the respect. I've seen the level of skiing gone down, the level of technique, the level of control, and the level of send it has gone through the roof. And so I think people have really lost the respect for these mountains and how powerful they are and the type of terrain that we're actually in, and definitely not judging the snow conditions correctly. So I would say what scares me the most in the mountains is the variable in snow conditions from day to day, obviously avalanches, other things, but you can ski something that would be extremely easy one day and it could set up and freeze that night and you could come back and you've already committed into the zone. And now how are you going to safely navigate it when it's, refrozen and gotten really hard, where if you fall and you start sliding for a little bit, it's going to be hard to self-arrest.
Great answer. What do you love most in the mountains?
Definitely the power. I mean, standing at the top of a mountain at sunrise, feeling the wind in your face. I think if you get stuck in suburbia, at least I did for a while, you kind of lose that grand awe feeling. I mean, standing at the top of a big peak at sunrise or being at the top of a mountain in a storm is, I think, one of the most powerful things you can really feel Mother Nature just right there in front of you.
What might be the funniest accident you've had in the mountains, or just a funny story?
I don't know if we can really share this one.
Oh, then let's definitely share it.
Okay. So I was raised a vegan. We kind of got to give a little back to this. So
I love it. Like California hippie, man. I love it.
Yeah, it's California hippie. So I was raised a vegan. So I'm lactose intolerant. So dairy doesn't really sit well with me.
Ah,
And so I'm in Europe racing World Cup ski cross. And so we have qualification runs. So you go one at a time and it's just a timed run. And that's how you get spread into your brackets for the racing. Well, anyway, so I'm in Europe, and that morning, I don't know, I must have had butter on my bread in the morning. Anyways, I had some dairy that morning, and I just wasn't feeling
oh
that good. And anyways, in ski cross, you have to pull out of a start gate, and so you pull as hard as you can. And when I pulled as hard as I could, I had a little accident, and so you're tucking for a long ways. And long story short, there's a lot of terrain and jumps, and so it was probably one of the worst sensations I've had in my life. I got to the bottom. I ended up qualifying really well, and at that time, my ski technician, he would never let me take my skis to the ski lodge, so he gives them to me at the start, and then he takes them from me at the finish. So I had to wait for him there, hand him his skis, and just tell him I had to go. So that was my funniest, worst accident.
I think that's really funny because I think all
Okay,
of us.
I pooped my pants.
Yeah, it's a lot of our funniest stories from people we interview here are around poo, and so this fits right in. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because when they see you guys pull on those when you go out of the gate, and you know how hard you're flexing your core when you do that.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's obvious that if you were already feeling a little loose, that you would poo yourself, and that's great. I love it, man. What's the scariest accident or story you've had in the mountains?
scariest accident I've had in the mountains. Again, growing up a ski racer and ski racing. We do everything in a controlled environment. We have A netting and B netting, and you take good slams, but you know that everyone's there. So I haven't ever really been out in the backcountry and gotten hurt without people coming. So I would say that it's scary when you crash, but to know that the whole EMTs, everybody's right there on site is kind of a comforting thing. So I'd have more of a painful experience than a really scary experience.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't really exposed myself to really scary situations where I'm all alone and off the beaten path.
And I love the relativity here because to me, ski racing would be terrifying, and hitting hitting the net and hitting the fence would be terrifying. So yeah, I love that. To everybody's, to each his own, and everybody's perspective is so different.
I think it's just nice when when you have, I've knocked myself out and coming to and everybody's right there and you have all the care that you need I think is, at least I find comfort in that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big difference, medically when we talk about, I'm a wilderness first responder, and we talk about the big difference is being near definitive care or not. Right. And so that is the beauty of ski racing, is generally there's EMTs, there's people right there to help you. And in the backcountry, obviously you don't have that. So it's a much different situation when you're a first responder.
I would say the worst fear I have, now that I think about it, is probably snapping the plastic on B netting. When you go into a B net at 60 miles an hour, the sound of everything snapping around you, it sounds like your body's breaking in half. But all those plastic poles and clips start breaking, and it's very loud and very violent.
Tell us more. I don't understand. What is A net and what is B netting?
A netting is a type of netting that's used in downhill. So it's actually anchored off of poles, and it's hung, about 20 to 30 feet in the air. Whereas B net is the fencing that you see on the side of most race hills, and it's just stuck in the ground. And so B net, what they're going to use to trap the body, is the whole net is going to catch you like a fish net, and the poles are designed to break and break away, and the whole system will entrap you. But if you're going really fast, you can go through B nets because those poles break so easily. Whereas A net is actually, it's anchored in the ground and anchored, up in the air. And it's kind of like a trampoline. There's been, if you ever, YouTube A net crashes, you can see some pretty nasty ones. People will go into them and they can come flying back out.
Ooh, scary. So I like that. The B net actually is almost like a dynamic rope. It's designed to absorb your impact. So that's cool.
Yeah. The main goal here is to stop you from going into the woods.
Makes sense. I saw a gnarly crash the other day. I was watching World Cup. And the guy, it looked like he hit 2 rows of B netting, and man, he was tangled. But
yeah, so the idea is you're going to set up, if it's a really bad corner or something, you're going to have 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 layers of B net, and then the A net is the last resort.
Got it. Okay, that makes more
So
sense because
for those of you that don't ski race, it's like a runaway truck ramp.
yes,
We're trying to slow down a runaway vehicle. And the body, of course, the longer period you can, the longer distance you can slow a body down, the less G forces that are introduced, and the less likelihood there is for injury.
trying to avoid the rapid deceleration makes sense.
Exactly.
How many friends have you lost in the mountains?
Well, I mean, I think just this past week, like Kyle Schmain and I, he's from
Oh.
South Lake Tahoe.
So sad.
We grew up. He was just kind of a little guy that ski raced with me. I dated a girl from South Lake forever when I was in high school, and so I spent a lot of time with Kyle. But I mean, that one's just recently. You can go way back. I had Brendan Allen and Brian Richmond. They skied off the back of. At that point, it was Squaw Valley. They died in an avalanche.
Was that off
This
the
was
back
with-
of KT?
Yes.
Oh my
off the back.
gosh.
So they were skiing home to go play video games at their house. And I remember my mom waking me up at 10 o'clock that night, hey, where's Brian Allen? And I was like,
no.
oh, they went to go play video games. It's like, they never made it there.
Oh, it's
I
so
was
sad.
I think the most traumatic one for me personally is I was in New Zealand, and I was late to a race camp, and the lodge we were staying at, you had both freestylers and racers. And so I was the odd one out. So I got to room with a freestyler, and his name was Eric Nigelo. He had a really weird last name. Anyways, we hadn't really become friends before this trip, but here we were both seniors in high school. The whole world's ahead of us. At that time we're talking about our, off-road vehicles. We were gonna, go four-wheeling when we got back to Tahoe, and all of a sudden we had become best friends. We'd spent 3 weeks together there. And if you've ever shared a dorm room with a buddy for 3 weeks on a ski trip, your stuff's all, thrown everywhere. Well, anyways, we'd always visit Treble Cone, and we'd always meet, we'd finish training, and the freestyle place would, all the runs kind of run fall line. And then there's a big collection run at the bottom that takes you back to the lodge.
Uh-huh.
And we'd always race, back for lunch. And it was our last day there, and it was springtime. And so the kind of in between the Groom Pass, there was drainages, and they started melting out. And there was a blind roll, and like I had a bad feeling. And so I slowed down, and he tucked right by me. I went over this blind roll. Well, the groomer went over the blind roll. It was like a winch cat, and then it was rock. So he just then groomed back uphill.
Ooh.
So he never finished the path. So I slow down, and I come over, and he's tumbling through the volcanic rock.
Oh.
And that was so hard to watch.
And he didn't survive.
Pushed his nose into his brain.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry, and thank you for sharing. But yeah, it's I mean, obviously even heavier when you're actually there when the person
Yeah,
passes.
that one was,
Oof.
and it was the one saving grace is on. We're about probably 50 yards from that collection run. There was a doctor was skiing down the collection run, and he skied right. He watched it. He skied right up, and he told me to go get ski patrol.
Okay.
So I didn't stay there on scene, but I knew what had happened. I watched it. But
Wow. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It was rough. And then what was also really rough is they made me pack his ski bag.
Ooh, that is rough.
So
How did that
yeah.
whole experience change you?
I think it's just like wondering, like, why did I feel caution and he didn't?
And that sort of scratches at the surface of maybe some survivor's guilt, which is not uncommon.
Not survivor's guilt. It's just like winning to the lodge wasn't worth going over the blind roll for me. But I just don't. Yeah, just out of abundance of why wasn't he scared? Like, why was I scared?
That's interesting. I guess we'll never know. How many avalanches have you been in?
I've been in slides, but I mean, I've never been fully buried.
Nice. So you're always
Yeah.
able to escape.
Yeah, no, I'm a ski racer. I mean,
Yeah.
I ski on watered and injected hills, and I haven't. There's been a really big push into the backcountry, and I don't know. I don't have it hasn't had an allure to me yet. And I guess God invented chairlifts, therefore I shall ride them.
Yes, I love that. Well, I'm this is always an interesting one too. Have you ever been hurt while skiing?
Yes, of course.
What might your injuries been?
Just 3 weeks before the Olympics, we are at Lake Placid for World Cup ski cross, and they cut a big bank turn and actually cut it with a zog, which was really cool. So
Whoa.
it was this huge. I've never seen this feature before. But what they did is inside they put really big rollers, and it was faster to absorb the rollers than go outside and ride the big bank turn. And anyways, I was leading the heat and got into the rollers and got kind of back seat loaded and ended up cartwheeling into the now icy wall
Ooh.
that was, outside. And that I dislocated my collarbone from my sternum, which
Ooh.
I don't know how you can do that without breaking your collarbone. But anyways, it was the luckiest thing ever. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten to race the Olympics. I had had a broken collarbone. So did a lot of physical therapy, got it going, and got to the big show.
Well, I'm so glad, man. You've been on ski trips all over the world. Where was your favorite ski trip?
Definitely New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
I started going to New Zealand when I was 13 years old with the Squaw Valley ski team, and I just loved the people there. It was amazing back then with our exchange rate. You could ski a month in New Zealand for the same price as you could go to Mount Hood for 3 weeks.
Whoa.
So I also believe skiing on winter snow is very important. Just that chalky surface when you're younger and you're learning to have that good feedback compared to skiing on salted snow.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can learn some bad habits skiing on salted snow, and when you have that good purchase under your feet, you're able to really learn how to throw your body down the hill and gain skill sets that you can't on summer salted snow.
Is there anywhere you've been on a ski trip that you would not go back to?
San Candido, Italy. I don't need to go back to Lake Placid.
Why not?
It was cold. It was very cold. Yeah, I don't need to go back and see the East Coast again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I love skiing. It's hard to really denounce because now as I'm thinking about it, I mean, I would still love to ski there than not ski at all. So obviously that would mean I would go back.
Is there anywhere you've not skied yet that you'd love to go and ski there?
Well, actually, I got a trip coming up. I'm going March 5th through the 12th. I'm going to Jackson Hole.
Whoa!
I've never skied the village.
No way. So, I'm in Jackson right now.
Yeah, so I've never skied the village. So that's going to be exciting. Never, I raced at Snowbird, but we raced slalom down at the very bottom. I've never skied Snowbird Alta.
Whoa! All right.
So I've ski racing. I've had this opportunity to go around the world, but we end up. I'm sure if you're at a resort and you see the hill that they race on versus what the resort is like, that's what you could encapsulate my experiences of, skiing around the world. I've skied all over Austria and France, but you're on this little section of the mountain, and then I'm looking out over here, and when you're there, you have so much invested that you're not going to get your fat skis and go out and get super tired exploring the mountain. You're there to, race and compete at your highest level. And you know that one day, God willing, you'll be back to explore the mountain and enjoy it. So this is the first trip, Jackson. I'm going there to free ski. I'm not packing up race skis. I'm packing up fat skis and praying for snow.
You're going to have a blast, man. What's your favorite ski movie of all time?
Oh, it's got to be Blizzard of Oz or
yes.
I don't know. It's Schmidt back in the day. I just remember being a little kid and being at Sugar Bowl because my family had a cabin there. Back then they called it the Magic Carpet. You'd ride the gondola and you couldn't drive cars into Sugar Bowl. You'd get in there. But anyways, at the main lodge, they had a little video library. And I just remember going there and getting the old Warren Miller movies. And then once I saw Scott Schmidt starting to turn it up, I was hooked.
I agree. Blizzard of Oz comes up a lot for that question here on the show.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, a lot. What challenges you the most intellectually on a daily basis?
I love electronics. Here we go. We're sitting here in my golf simulator right now. And I have a ball tracking unit. It's a radar-based ball tracking unit that can track the metrics on the club. So it'll get your club path, which way it's going, which way the face is traveling. And then from the ball spin, it'll calculate, which way the ball's spinning, if it's slicing back, everything. And I think that excites me so much that ball only has to fly 12 feet. And that little device there through radar can track all that and then dial it all in through algorithms. You can go back to when I was done ski racing after 2010. My friend and I, we started a drone company called Copter Kids.
That's right.
And the biggest thing was building gimbals. Now you can get like a stabilized camera gimbal. You can just go buy it anywhere. But back then we were building our own gimbals and then programming them, using like an Arduino board. So you have a IMU on the final axis, and then you're having to tune this in. So I'd imagine it's like tuning like a tuning fork. You want it to, not oscillate. You want it to stabilize, and you can adjust how much it corrects. And yeah, so things like that, just gadgets, electronics, that's what excites me. Right now, I'm super into this golf thing. I don't know what the next adventure is, but yeah. And then like ChatGPT, I was on that 1st of December. I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah, I think we're at a big like pivot point in technology, but I can't really put my finger on it. But I think that the next 10 years are going to be very, very exciting. Like I think that we finally have the bandwidth and cloud computing and things are going to really, really accelerate here at a fast pace.
That was so nerdy and so techie. That made me so happy.
I'm sorry. Did I go too far with that?
You went way too far, and I love it. That's the kind of stuff
right.
I'm looking.
Let me encapsulate that.
No. Leave it as it is, man. That's the kind of stuff I love, because what we're really looking for is like an expose, right? As a window into your soul, and any stories that you're willing to tell, man. Don't hold back. So that was great. That was a fantastic answer. But I'll keep rolling. What's your favorite book or books?
I can't really think of anything that comes to like, here's something embarrassing. I don't think since we've gotten iPads, I don't think I've really read a book front to back.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much you can learn online now.
That is my quest. Again, here's a fun fact. I'm the only male on my mom's side of their family not to get their pilot's license.
Really? So they fly planes, helicopters?
Yeah, they always flew small planes. So my grandfather, he would fly airplanes. My grandmother even got their pilot's license, but it just wasn't something that was for me. But then, I mean, you could go full circle. Then I started a drone company. So obviously aviation was somewhere in the blood, but I think we're getting off subject here.
No, tell me more. Where did your family fly?
Just all over. I mean, my uncle keeps his planes at a hangar down in Gardnerville.
Nice.
They're based out of the Bay Area. They fly out of San Carlos. Just private general aviation.
Who has inspired you the most in your life?
Well, I think growing up, I was always inspired by, you could look at somebody like Darren Rawls, like that. Somebody when I was younger, he inspired me. I loved the way he skied. I loved his work ethic. I loved that he would come to our junior races, and he was always really approachable. And so it's kind of this. It all came full circle when I got to race him at the Olympics in Vancouver. So
that's so cool.
That was kind of like, the person that you've, set off to become. Now here you are lining up on the world stage next to your childhood hero and about to race the Olympics together.
Nice. How did that feel?
It felt amazing. It felt like if you, set off in your job career and now all of a sudden you're, at the position where you want to be next to the person that you were, always, striving to be.
Very cool, man. And we've had Darren on the podcast too. He's a very interesting, amazing person.
Yeah. I mean, he's won the Hahnenkamm, and we got to sit here and pay respect to that.
Tell us what the Hahnenkamm is.
The Hahnenkamm is a race in Kitzbühel, Austria. It's a long downhill. There's the top section is full on, very intense. Some of the hardest downhill skiing there is. It's watered, it's icy. And then you have a long flat section. And so if you can imagine doing a wall set for, about a minute and a half, your legs are pretty gassed. And then you come into the final pitch, and the final pitch has a little jump and a side hill traverse, which on its own isn't extremely difficult. But once your legs are gassed and you're throttled, it's probably one of the hardest 30 seconds in skiing.
And our good friend who also came on the podcast, Travis Ganong, just got third place there. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
so
that's huge.
Pretty fired up about that, man.
Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by 11.8. Damn, it feels good to be a skier, right? 11.8 enhances the experience of freedom and exploration of the mountain with trustable gear. They never compromise when creating gear for long-term use in the mountains, whether this relates to the design process, the choice of materials, or production. Find the gear you can trust for years to come at 11.8.com. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Brian Head Resort. Did you know kids age 12 and younger ski free every day at Brian Head Resort? Brian Head Resort is located in Southeastern Utah, where Little Rippers ski free. No purchase required. That's free. Free. Learn more at brianhead.com. That's brianhead.com.
Well, you survived the rapid fire round. Thank you so much. And so now we're going to dig into some of your deeper stuff here. So we got to start with skier cross because I'm just blown away by this. You competed in the 2010 Vancouver Winter Olympics in skier cross. You got 9th place overall, which is just completely badass. And so just to start, what is skier cross? Could you tell us, please?
Yeah, for those of you that haven't visually seen the sport of skier cross is in the Olympics. In X Games, we'll run 6 competitors at once. In the Olympics, we only run 4. And on the World Cup, you only run 4. So it's a forward-falling start gate. All 4 competitors start at the same time. And then you go through a set of jumps, bank turns, more jumps, more bank turns. And courses usually vary from about a minute and 20 seconds to a minute and a half up to 2 minutes at X Games, and the first person to the bottom wins. So it's not timed. So we're racing head to head. The way the brackets work is the top 2 from each heat advance on to the next round. As far as qualifying goes, we qualify 32 athletes. So you have a round of 32 that make it out of the time trials. Then from that, the top 2 from each heat advance. So obviously that goes to a round of 16. Then you'd go to a round of 8, and then you'd go to, your final round of 4. And so in that final round of 4, you're sitting at the Olympics, and there's one person on the start gate that will leave without a medal.
Wow. That's a heavy last race. So let's dig a little bit more into your ski racing background. Could you kind of tell us how this progressed for you and how this all happened for you?
Yeah. So I grew up alpine racing. So for those who aren't familiar, alpine racing would be your traditional sports of starting with slalom, then you have giant slalom, then you have super giant slalom, and then you have downhill. And so I raced those as junior coming up, and got an opportunity to race some NORAM, so that's North American Cup races. Finished in the top 10 there several times. Also had a chance to travel with the U.S. ski team to race Europa Cups. Also traveled with them to South America to train in the summer. And then, I never really made that break. I never got a World Cup start in Alpine. And so I was good, but I wasn't great, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I could, go to US Nationals every year. I could be top 10. I could go to a North American Cup race and be top 10. But, in order to get a World Cup start, you have to be top 3, overall for the season, so you earn your spot to get a World Cup start. So that I never broke through in that. And then my friend back in 2007, he convinced me to go do a ski cross. And I kind of knew about the sport, and I always just thought it was just a bunch of guys out there having fun. It wasn't really serious. But now all of a sudden it was going to be full metal sport in Vancouver. And I went out to a place called, I went out to Telluride. And at Telluride back then, it was the Honda Ski Tour. It was that for 1 year, and then went back to the Jeep King of the Mountain. But went out there to a Honda Ski Tour event. And when I went there, I wasn't really aware that was a qualification criteria for the U.S. skier cross team. But went out there. I qualified second. Darren Rawls qualified first,
Wow.
and then I ended up fifth in the race. And
This
the
is your
top
first
five,
race.
first race.
Wow.
And so the top 5 athletes from that event were automatically on the U.S. freestyle team, and we're fully funded. And then we were on our
Whoa.
way to go race World Cup ski cross. And
Wow. That
so
happened fast.
so I came out of that race, and 2 weeks later we were on our way to Europe, and it was amazing. It was Casey Puckett, Jake Fiala, and myself headed to Lake Contamine, France to go race our first ever World Cup ski cross. We get there, and now these Europeans have been racing ski cross for the Europeans have been racing ski cross for a number of years, so they have points and everything. So all of us have to start dead last, so we started in the 60s or 70s.
Wow.
And so all those guys had finished and gone in, and here we come, all 4 of us, and we all skied into like the top, I don't know, 10 or 15 in qualifying, from 70.
Wow.
And that was it. We were in.
How did that all feel? It being your first race, ending up on the ski team, going to Europe and doing well. Were you just in shock and awe? I mean, was it sort of a culmination of your dreams? But it also was something totally new for you. Tell us more.
Well, my dream was always to race World Cup. And now all of a sudden I was doing it in a different discipline. I think, there was a part of me that really wanted to be an alpine ski racer. And I still to this day have so much respect for what they've done. And I don't think I gave myself enough, credit for what we accomplished the ski cross. But it was amazing. I mean, here you are, you've spent your whole life wanting to race World Cup, and now you're here, you're doing it, and skiing right into the top 15 in your first race is kind of a dream come true. So it kind of a mix of emotions there.
Must have been just surreal. As the only word I can think of, at least from my perspective.
Absolutely surreal. Yeah.
It must have been at some point where you were standing, at the end of the races going, what the hell am I doing here? This is, this was not the plan, but this is great. That's so cool. And that's so interesting for me. Congratulations, man. That just feels so accelerated and serendipitous. 2007, you said, right? And then by 2010, a couple of years later, you're in the Olympics. That is nuts to me. So we've got to make the transition because I actually haven't heard the story. So you're on the U.S. ski team, but you raced in the Olympics for the Jamaican ski team, which is very cool. How did that transition? How did that transition occur?
Well, so that was that beginning of that first World Cup season. So it was 2008. You could fast forward to X Games, where that must have been in late December, early January. We're in France. We raced several more World Cups. I came home. We had X Games. I won qualifying in X Games that year, and then ended up 5th in the race. And then went back to Europe, finished the World Cup season, and I finished 9th or 8th overall in the World Cup season.
Wow! Congrats.
And so I was able to use that momentum, with X Games, and I was really young. And I was able to use that momentum. And, my father's Jamaican, and it was always my father passed away when I was much younger. And it was always my dream to, represent Jamaica in the Olympics. And this was kind of the time was here, and the time was now. With the sport of ski cross, there wasn't, like in alpine racing, like it'd be really hard to put together an on snow training program. I would have to team up with a much larger team. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of the perfect storm. I just needed a good ski technician. And so we put together our own program. We got great companies like Spider came on board, did a 27-piece clothing line with Spider.
Wow.
Brico came on board. Brico did a signature helmet with goggles, which is really funny still to this day. I kind of see some helmets and stuff floating around from time to time. And use that momentum, and came out, raced at 2009 World Cup season. We kind of had a problem with our head coach, so we lost him, and it was kind of a rough season. I kept crashing, and just kind of lost all that momentum I had in 2008. And so going into 2009, or going into that Olympic year, it was really, really, really rough. I crashed in like first World Cup ski cross of the year I didn't qualify for.
Oh,
I'd crashed in training, and it's the first time I'd ever missed the top 32 in qualifying. We're coming up to the last race that would qualify for you for the Olympics because it's a head-to-head sport, whereas in alpine, everybody gets a spot, like every country gets to get represented in alpine.
mm-hmm.
Whereas in ski cross, we wouldn't bring every athlete there.
Okay.
So they only brought the top 40 in the world. But if you have countries like Austria or somewhere that's a powerhouse, they can only fit 4 spots. So that
Okay.
probably went back in the field to say top like 50 or 55. So, anyways, here I am. Now it's been like over a year since I've had a good result.
Ooh.
And it's coming into the last race. And our last race was at Alpe d'Huez. And I ended up 12th there. And that just snuck me under that bubble to qualify. So
Ooh.
I was really close to not even getting an opportunity to go to the Olympics.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad that worked out.
So yeah, so snuck that in, and then again, like I said, that happened, and then flew from there to the East Coast to Lake Placid and crashed and hurt myself,
Oh, that's
and
right.
then got myself just back together in time for X Games. We had X Games right before the Olympics, and I didn't do that well in X Games, but again, my collarbone was so bad at that point I couldn't really pull out of the start. So
Oof.
that was a rough race, and I felt pretty good for the Olympics. I wouldn't say that I was 100%, but I was definitely ready to take on the task.
And taking one step back, I am so curious about the creation of the Jamaican ski team. Were you the first ever Jamaican ski athlete? What were the logistics? You had to call, Jamaica's consulate, or how did that work?
So there's a person named Richard Som, and unfortunately, he passed away
Oh,
2 years ago, which was really, really sad. He
I'm sorry.
had a tragic car accident. But
No.
anyways, he's the one who put together the Jamaican Ski Federation. So
Okay.
he put that together back in the 90s or maybe early 2000s.
Okay.
And one of his sons represented Jamaica in the World Championships for
Nice.
alpine skiing. And then I believe his son didn't follow all the way through to go to the Olympics. But with that groundwork being done, that means that Jamaica as a country was recognized by FIS.
Got it.
So now that your country is recognized by FIS, then FIS has a clause in it that you have a one time that I can switch my FIS license from a US to a Jamaican, but still keep my points, my profile.
Mhm.
So after I went to Jamaica, there's no way I could come back. I would lose all my world ranking, and I'd have to go back to say a NORAM. I'd have to win a NORAM title to even get my World Cup start back. So
Ooh.
once you go this route, there's no coming back. And that's
Mhm.
just so that way countries like Austria and these powerhouses aren't just, stacking the Olympics and everybody's switching and skiing for all these weird countries and then coming back.
Makes sense. Okay, so it already existed, so you were able to basically call them up and say, "Hey, I'd like to ski for Jamaica." And how many Jamaican ski racers have there been?
Well, we just had one in the past Olympics.
Right? Is it Benji or?
Benji, yes. So
Yeah.
we haven't personally had a chance to meet yet. So,
Uh-huh.
but I think he's out in Jackson right now.
I think he's a
I feel
Jackson
like I follow
person.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. So I was thinking about reaching out to him when I'm heading out there, and maybe we could get together.
I hope you do, man. And tell me a little bit more about Jamaica. What's your experience been there? I assume you hang out there a bit.
Again, I'm really green on Jamaica.
Okay.
I'm a citizen by descent.
Uh-huh.
Since my father's Jamaican, that makes me a citizen. My father, my mother, they owned a piece of property in Jamaica. My half brother still lives on that piece of property,
Nice.
and I haven't been to Jamaica since 2014. It's the last
Okay.
time I was there.
Okay.
Before the Olympics and stuff, I went, several times to ramp up enthusiasm and get people on board for the program. But since then, I haven't really been back. Yeah, unfortunately, I love the people, I love the culture. I just have not lived there.
Very cool, man. Yeah, I haven't been. I'd love to go. It looks like a really fun place. And I obviously love a lot of the things that come from there, like reggae music. What kind of sacrifices does an elite ski racer have to make?
Well, I think with anything in life, if you want to be good at something, you have to dedicate yourself to it. So I don't consider them sacrifices. I think it's just as a nun dedicates herself to, religion, I think as an elite athlete, you've dedicated your life to sport.
In the modern, societal context, what do you think you sacrificed? It might not have felt like a sacrifice to you, but what would a normal person think that you may have sacrificed? How are you different to make this level of ski racing happen for you?
It just goes back to, how much work are you willing to put in?
Mm-hmm.
If I think it goes back to you like we could just go full circle and come back to this golf thing. I wasn't amazing when I picked up a golf club, but because I'm going to sit here and make sure that I, hit balls every day, one day somebody's going to walk up to me and be like, "You're the most naturally talented person in the world." I'll just say thank you. I grew up racing BMX, and I built a whole BMX dirt jump. I had dirt jumps all around my house growing up. And so every day I'd make sure to ride my dirt jumps for an hour and a half.
Nice.
And I became an expert BMX rider. I, would qualify for nationals and rode for Factory Wild Child for a little bit. But, when you peel that away, people just see you on a stage. And I don't think people see how absolutely driven and consumed you have to become by something in order to become the greatest. Like, I believe you have super athletes, you have your Michael Jordans and other freaks that just come out that no one can ever touch. But I think if you look at someone like Michaela Schifrin, like that person trains and works harder
Mm-hmm.
than the next 5 competitors combined.
Wow.
And now if she can find joy in that process, and if you can find an athlete that finds joy in the process of training, of what goes into it, then that's when I think they really flourish.
And that's what it takes. It is. I've heard a little bit about her routine, and it sounds pretty intense. I love that you were a BMX rider. How do you think that all that time spent BMX riding and racing as a kid helped your ski racing?
I think ski racing it helped a little bit, but I think with ski cross it just was a natural fit. I mean, I came out at the gates and on a ski cross course, it just felt like second nature. It wasn't anything I had to learn or adapt to. It was just go.
That might have been your secret sort of sauce, your secret background, huh? Because
that
I'm
was
assuming
definitely
I'm assuming that your BMX cross was a similar setup, right? 4 guys, go.
Yeah, we actually raced 8.
Whoa, that's mayhem.
On a BMX. So, but I mean, it's just, that comfort of skiing right next to someone, same way, in BMX, you're locking handlebars in bank turns and going over jumps. And so that comfort in ski cross, I never had to get used to skiing next to someone. I never had to get used to what it felt like sitting in a start gate next to people. And so that was definitely a natural fit for me. And I think it definitely helped me excel.
That feels like a breakthrough to me. That feels like the secret story that nobody else might know. That you grew up BMX racing, then you really got good at skiing through all the ski racing, and then that first race of ski cross, you were able to do great and qualify and get a great ranking. Maybe because, or almost surely because you had that BMX racer background. That's full circle. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. I love little like cornerstones that you can't see, obviously, that come out in a conversation like this. I'd love to dig more into the Olympics, because what a lot of people ask me when I'm talking to, about Olympics and about Olympic athletes, they want to know more about what's it actually like being there. So we'll just start with a broad question. What was it like being at the Olympics in Vancouver, Canada in 2010 as an athlete?
Well, I think I have a slightly different story than, if I was with the US team and I had a huge group of fellow team members there. So I was the only athlete that year in Vancouver. The bobsled team didn't qualify.
Okay.
So I was the only athlete representing Jamaica, and they house you in the athlete village, like according to your country.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were housed. It was just me and my ski technician and, a couple of people from the delegation. So We were really small. So I went up there for opening ceremonies. I got to carry the flag into the stadium.
So
And
cool.
then since I was more nervous before carrying that flag into the stadium than before I raced.
Really?
Like by far.
Oh, and why do you think?
Because the whole world is watching.
Yeah.
And when you're racing, who's going to tune into the Olympics to watch ski cross, you know?
Wow. But everybody likes the opening ceremonies. Wow, that's so cool.
So I got to carry the flag into the stadium. That was by far the most amazing experience of my life, I think.
Wow.
I would say probably that, and watching the birth of your first child. I don't know. But just things that are just, mind altering that you're able to get there and achieve that. So anyways, after opening ceremonies, since Vancouver's in the same time zone as Lake Tahoe, I flew back to Lake Tahoe and I skied and trained here at Alpine Meadows. At that time, there was a company called JMA Ventures, and they were a big supporter of the Jamaica ski team and a big sponsor of mine. So they spent the money and built a ski cross course.
Wow.
And so I got to come home and I got to train here in Alpine Meadows. And then I went back up to Vancouver just, 2 days before I flew up, had one rest day and then raced. So yeah, I went there 2 days before my event.
Wow. Heavy, man. And what is the Olympic Village like?
For me, the Olympic Village, but I didn't think there was anything that exciting. I was in the village. So for Vancouver, you can't have your friends come to the Olympic Village. If I wanted a friend to come, they have to, drop off all their documents and go through a rigorous check to be able to get screened, to be able to even come into the village. So I never had any friends come into the village. And again, since I didn't really have teammates, I didn't really have, a group of people to really hang out in the village. So you have to stay in the village the night before your event. You have to leave from the village to go to your event for security reasons.
Oh, wow.
We all get bussed together, and being in the village, I mean, it's just heavy security. There's snipers on every roof.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Imagine you have all of the world's best athletes in one place. So I was in the village in Vancouver. I think one of my favorite things I did there is we had a little area that you could go out and look into the bay of Vancouver. And I'm out there one night, and there's a guy in a rebreather, snorkel suit, like a full I don't know, Navy SEAL special op guy, just chilling under this dock.
The frogman.
Water. Yeah, just sitting there.
Whoa.
So yeah, the amount of you felt very safe.
I guess so. Yeah, because that's kind of my next question is what do the athletes see and experience at the Olympics that normal people don't know about?
Yeah, so I would always leave the village because I was in Vancouver. So I'd leave the village and go meet my friends, in downtown Vancouver.
Makes sense.
In different places. So the village was cool. I mean, there's different lounges. The food was not amazing. You have just a big buffet style that has to be running 24 hours a day because of everybody's different schedules. So,
right.
Food that sits underneath a hot lamp for so long isn't that delicious. So everybody ends up eating McDonald's because it's fresh and ready to order.
Oh, that's so funny.
I thought it was great because every time you ordered McDonald's, you got a receipt, even though you didn't pay for it.
So the best athletes in the world get flown into Vancouver for this and eat McDonald's.
Unfortunately, it's warm and hot. Yeah. And this is 12 years ago, so this could definitely be outdated and not current information. Everything could be different.
It might have changed, but I think the last Olympics with COVID were pretty not that fun in the village as well. My next question you maybe have already answered. What was the party scene like?
Yeah, again, I mean, there was nothing in the village. I went there and slept and ate McDonald's.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, I think
and poked through the buffet as much as I could, and try to find a spin bike.
Funny. I think as a NARP, as my friend just told me, a non-athlete regular person, it's just so interesting that we think that there's just this party scene and everybody's hooking up and it's insane in the village, and then most athletes I talk to say it's pretty chill.
Yeah, I mean, I never saw that. I don't know if that's somewhere else. Again, I wasn't trying to hunt that down. So that could have been there and I could just be no wiser to it.
What might be the highs and lows of being an Olympian?
The highs and the highs of getting to compete on the world stage and represent your country, and the lows, the moment you cross the finish line, and for me, like being eliminated.
Oh,
When I
yes.
got knocked out, um, knowing that you fought as hard as you could, and that's it. There's not another chance. I mean, you're going to wait 4 years.
How did
So
that feel, and how did you cope with that?
how did I cope with that? I moved on to something else in my life. If I would have won or medaled or something and done well, I would have kept going. But to try to get people together, and it takes a lot of money to run your own team.
Oh, I imagine.
It takes about 200 back then. It took about $250,000 a year to be your
Ooh,
coach, your ski technician, and travel the entire world.
right.
And that's hard to muster that together. Especially we just went into a recession, and it's hard to keep that ball rolling. And so by finishing ninth, that doesn't really you know that doesn't really pencil out or add up to having people want to sign back on to keep going. So for me, it was time to go do something I could win at, and went and won in the drone world. Was the first people to lift a red camera, the first people to really take on this drone industry. So for me, I was able to channel that into something else.
And tell me more
Um,
about about what you did with drones.
what I did with drones, one of my best friends growing up, Trent Palmer, he had an RC helicopter and had a camera on the front. And it was after the Olympics. And at that time, I put a GoPro on this like flying wing that I had.
Uh-huh.
And anyways, we were like exchanging stuff back and forth. And finally, we were like, oh, let's get together and do something. Anyway, so we got together, and there was a professional mountain biker named Paul Basagodia.
Okay.
He ended up later on getting really hurt at Rampage, but this was
Ooh.
back in 2010. We went and shot a piece in his backyard. He had a little compound out in Nevada, and we shot a piece with him, and edited it and just put it up on YouTube. And again, we were really excited about what we did, but
Uh-huh.
I don't think at that moment we really understood how everybody else was going to take that piece.
Uh-huh.
Well, in 2010, that video got 100,000 views in a week.
Wow.
To date this, Yahoo hosted it on their homepage, and that was back when Yahoo was somewhat still relative or relevant. So, so that can kind of date you on how this all happened. But yeah, so did that, and the phone started ringing, and we took off from there. We started working without a business name, without anything, and just built and ramped and threw everything at it.
Nice, man. And are you still doing that? And what were some of the big projects that you did?
No, my friend Trent Palmer, he's still doing that.
Nice.
He's now, he flies bush planes. He's really building his YouTube channel and
Good for
social
him.
media platforms. And I've transitioned back here into what I truly know and love, which is skiing.
I love it, man. And we'll get more into that, what you're up to right now. But I did want to hit the X Games really quick. So you mentioned you'd competed in the X Games 5 times. And I'm just, again, the broad question, what was competing in the X Games like?
Well, I'd say the first time was definitely the most exciting.
Uh-huh.
Because for my generation growing up, the X Games were really compelling. It was brand new. It was the pinnacle of action sports. Action sports were new. And so then, growing up, like I remember when Tony Hawk did his 900, and
Oh, yeah.
I remember all these iconic moments of X Games. And now here I am at X Games in 2008, just, I don't know, kind of starstruck. At least for me, like the X Games, it was, I don't know, it was really cool. It's the loudest show on snow. The X Games is very exciting. X Games is a totally different vibe than the Olympics.
How's it different?
And How's it different? Well,
Yeah.
you're burning gasoline, you're backflipping snowmobiles. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know how much more different you could make something. I mean, I would say that it's like I would say the Olympics is like watching an orchestra or going to the symphony, and X Games is going to a dubstep punk rock concert. Um, I mean, one brings out the lasers and smoke, smoke guns and smoke machines, and the other one brings out the absolute most beautiful music there is. Great artists. So yeah, they're just different. One's loud and in your face and action sports, and the other one is the pinnacle of sport itself.
So maybe better parties at X Games.
Better parties at X Games, absolutely.
Nice. And what was that like? What was the fun social part like for you?
Fun social part. Once you get an athlete credential, you can just get in everywhere. So that's definitely the fun part of X Games.
Well, yeah, and especially once your event is over, you can just go wild.
We always raced on the last day, so I never really went out at X Games. So I can't give you the down low on that. Our event was always Sunday. The first year I raced in 2008, here we are. We're in the start gate and we're waiting to go. Since I qualified first, I had to be in the first heat. Okay. And X Games is all about television. So we have a scheduled start time, but we're going live on ABC. And that was right during, was it March Madness or no, it wouldn't have been March Madness. There was a big basketball game. Anyways, It was live on TV. There was another big sporting event live on TV. So we're sitting there waiting for them to finish. Oh, and they went into overtime. And so we'd get a 30-second warning. Whoa. And then all of a sudden that sport goes back into overtime. So now you pull out of the start gate and you got to get refocused. So you're sitting there in your gear knowing that because of live television, we got to be ready to race in 30 seconds.
Wow.
So
that's heavy.
That's quite exciting, I have to tell you.
And challenging, right? I was going to ask, what's the most challenging, most difficult part about the X Games?
Working with live television when you're the first event of the day. Oof. So because we started at 11 a.m., which is right when X Games went live on Sunday morning. So everybody else knows that their schedule's kind of getting pushed back. And once X Games is live, then you kind of have more control over the event, and you know that this one's going next and that one's going to be there. But when you're the first heat, I have it on YouTube, that first race where, X Games comes on live. Sal Masekela is sitting there underneath my start gate explaining how this is Sunday at X Games and we're going to be racing ski cross. Now, I hear him saying that, you have the starter yelling, 30 seconds. And we're getting in because we're choreographing a whole show. So we're locking in the start gate. He's still there, doing his, intro to the X Games. And all of a sudden we're racing and we come right over his head.
Whoa, that is complex, man. And that's insane it's almost distracting that you have all that happening around you and you're being delayed and then go now. That's heavy, man. I can see how that would be really difficult. What might have been the best part of being an athlete at the X Games?
Best part of being an athlete at X Games, you're there. You qualified. You've accomplished a big goal. I mean, there's not very many people that get to say that they were invited to X Games. So I think you're part of a group. I think it's, why are people proud to graduate from an Ivy League school? Why are people proud to do different things? So I'd say that's the best part. You're part of a group of people that accomplished things in action sports.
Under the bright lights, man. That X Game, like you said, it's the biggest, loudest show on snow. What an experience. Well, thank you for sharing all that. I'd like to learn a little bit more about maybe even going back and where this, I'm not even sure where this fits in your life, but I know that you've worked with the National Brotherhood of Skiers, and which they often go by the NBS. So what is the National Brotherhood of Skiers, the NBS?
Where that fits into my life, unfortunately, that segment there ended as soon as I started skiing for Jamaica, because they're the National Brotherhood of Skiers and not International Brotherhood of Skiers. Growing up, they were a huge support of my ski racing career from the time I, was about 13 or 14 years old. So the National Brotherhood of Skiers is made up of, a bunch of different ski clubs that come together under the name of the National Brotherhood of Skiers. And their kind of club mission there is to identify and support talent in winter sports. Mm-hmm. So, to identify athletes of color and help support them. And their dream is to, put a person of color in the Olympics or on the World Cup. And so that's what they come together. Their group dues, there's, they have different conventions you go to. And so they do a lot of great fundraising, and they're a huge organization. And so they're able to really help support, athletes of color that wouldn't be able to, participate or financially make it in ski racing or other winter sports.
Nice. Thank you for explaining that. And yeah, we had Henry Rivers, the president, on the show this year, and we just covered, we did reports on every day of their 50th summit they just had in Vail. So if our listeners are interested, there's a bunch on snowbrains.com. And how did they support you? How did you work with the NBS?
So I worked with, and that's somebody I'm still in touch with. I was part of the All Season Ski Club. They're a ski club out of Oakland. Mm-hmm. So that's who I, skied for. They'd help you have, you're going to a NORAM race, right? It's going to be probably, $1,500, $2,000 to, get to this race. Mm-hmm. And so, they'll come together and help support, different things, or, you have a training camp that, you want to do. Even though you're going with the US ski team somewhere, you still have to front some of that bill. And so these are things that financially they'll help out with.
That is so cool. And what was it like hanging out with the NBS team?
Oh, they're amazing. I mean, when their summit comes to town, they're here.
Yes.
So I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to an NBS event.
I haven't yet. I need to go.
You need to.
Yeah.
They know how to party. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Where did you go?
Where did I go?
Yeah, for the summit.
Oh, we had summit in Keystone one year. You're really got to.
So you've been to multiple.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. How fun, man.
I've been to multiple summits.
And tell me a little bit more. What's the NBS summit like?
I went there as a youth. So for me, it was great. They would rent out training space and we'd set gates, and now we'd get to train on a beautiful hill with only a couple of athletes. So for me, it was a great training experience.
Very cool. And I think it also, then for the adults, I think it's a great party experience. They have all kinds of events and dinners and breakfasts, and I'm sure they go out, and I see videos of them dancing and just having a great time. So yeah, and they show up in the hundreds. It seems like they like you said, they make an impact.
I know there's a really funny story. The first time they were going to have the summit at Aspen.
Yes.
And did you ever hear this story?
Yeah, but you tell it.
Well, again, I don't want to mess up the facts on this story, because again,
you tell your version, and if I heard anything different, I'll chime.
Okay. So anyway, so they're planning summit at Aspen, so they've rented out all these hotels, and again, when you go to summit, I mean, these people come by the thousands.
Yes.
So we're talking that we're going to put 3,000 people into a town of Aspen. They plan summit at Aspen, and you have 3,000 colored people started rolling into Aspen. Everybody freaked out so bad that they called the National Guard.
Yes.
Okay, so that kind of puts it into context what kind of barriers to entry there are. I mean, here we are at Palisades Tahoe today, and we packed 13,000 people in there, and nobody called the National Guard because a whole bunch of people were blocking the village. But it's the country we live in. It's barriers that are broken down, and I believe today, if you had summit in Aspen, that would not happen. So I think we've moved a long ways forward.
No, because the summit was just in Vail, and thousands of the people from the NBS were there, and and I think that Aspen story is from the 60s or 70s, but I forget on that exactly. But that does roll us right into diversity, and you're a person of diverse background, and I'm just curious about your experience in the mountains.
Well, I think we have it right here. Like, look, we have a person of color on the front of Ski Magazine.
That's right here in my question. So tell me about, who is this person on the cover of Ski Magazine?
That's myself.
Yes. And so tell me, are you the first person of color on Ski Magazine?
I'm the first person to ever get the cover of a ski magazine of color.
Of any ski magazine,
like a major publication.
Yeah, but still, like one of the major national or international magazines. Wow. Okay, so tell us more. What was your experience shooting this and being on this cover, and what impact has it made for you?
Well, I think there's just so many different parts to that story, but at least for me personally, I think that once we strap on the helmet and we go skiing, I personally hope that everybody looks at this for the skiing and not for the color of my skin.
I agree.
And once we get past that, I also like my number 2 goal is that, maybe someday there's a little kid that would look up at this magazine and say, that person looks like me. I can do that.
And I think that will happen, because that is how the world works. When you see somebody that looks like you doing something that you dream about, that pathway is now very much open to you. Where when you don't have those examples and models in those positions, it feels very closed, which I'm sure you felt as a person of color. How did you feel growing up, not seeing your folks that looked like you represented in places that you were looking to be?
Well, so for me, I grew up with my mom, with a single mom. So I grew up in a white family. I grew up on the peninsula in the Bay Area with my grandparents that were white.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really felt myself, as being different until I got older. Until I moved up here to the mountains, and people would be like, "Oh, you're adopted," or yeah. And so so it wasn't until I was much older, and I don't know. I think I'm proud to look different. I'm proud to be different. It's definitely opened some doors for me that wouldn't have been opened if I wasn't colored. But again, like I'm I'm proud that like 9th place is the best that we've done. But I want that I want that to be broken this coming Olympics. Like I don't want to sit here and say this is where we're at. Like I hope that somebody has to break trail, right? And then once that trail's broken, then everybody else coming along has an easier time. And I want somebody to take that torch and really run with it.
I do too. And what do you think we need to do to create that path? What do we need to do to create and amplify more diversity in the mountains of North America?
Well, I think you could go back to what do we need to do to attract the best athletes to skiing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where's your LeBron James? Why, how do you not have these best athletes? Why aren't they focusing on skiing? So I think that's I think it's a diversity thing. I think it's also an opportunity thing. I don't think that I think this sport is really small, the sport of skiing. And so it's a really, really hard question. I think it's so complex. There's on so many different levels. Here we are today with skiing's so crowded you can barely ski down the mountain run. Are we going to go make new ski resorts? Are we going to introduce surge pricing?
Ooh.
Are we going to introduce reservations, which I know Jackson has reservations? Does that help the crowds there?
It does.
Okay.
Especially compared to
introduce reservations. Now take a step back, because everything that I've just talked about is making something more non-inclusive.
Yes. Exclusive.
Right? We are raising the barrier to entry. So like, how do you solve this problem? How do you create a good experience for everyone? How do you make something inclusive, but we have to raise the price so not everybody uses it? So it's really, really, it's a really, really hard puzzle. I don't think there's any one right way to do it. I think it would be amazing if we could somehow have a supplemental, ski tax, right? We have 1% or something. And what we do is we offer buses out of, low income neighborhoods or something out of the Central Valley. and these kids could sign up for a learn to ski weekend. I think because if you gotta first introduce people to the sport, and if you introduce, you play the numbers game. If you introduce enough of people of color, eventually we're going to have somebody where it sticks and like glue, and then we already have the support system in there to help them grow to become great. But again, out of all of the ski racers that I grew up with, when I was a little kid, when I was 10 years old, we'd go to a race and there's 100 kids on the start sheet.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those 100 kids made it to the Olympics? So
Yeah.
you have to get masses of numbers to get this one diamond out of the rough. How do you get those people introduced to the sport? How do you grow that? And here we are in ski communities that if you don't make $500,000 a year, you can't afford to live in.
It's getting crazy. It is getting crazy.
So how do you feel about this? How do we introduce inclusion? How do we make this sport attractive to people of color? How do you feel?
It's tough. I'm not sure how to feel. I feel as confused as you might feel, but the only clarity that I've gotten, and I would just be parroting somebody else, but when I talked to Henry Rivers, the president of the National Brotherhood of Skiers, Henry really talked about finding ways to be more welcoming to people of color. So he thinks, when we show up at ski resorts, there's little things like just the music, the food, all kinds of things that just don't include their culture, don't make them feel welcome. And I think those are probably pretty good starting points because I think they're easy to implement. They don't cost a lot of money to change. So the small things like that might be the starting point. And then from there, the socioeconomics of it are really difficult to impossible. But I love his ideas there of just, starting with some basic cultural issues, how we can be more welcoming. And then, I do think there needs to be more programs like our friends in Bend, Oregon called Vamonos Outside. They have funding and get people of color into the mountains, and they don't just take them there for a day or two. They work on it for a whole season, and they have a small sample size. So Vamonos Outside, we had them on the podcast. They might only work with 20 or so kids that year, but they get them out, and their goal is to get them into the industry, whether it be working at a ski resort or being some kind of pro, but or working for a retailer, but getting them to work in the industry in some way, shape, or form, so that we can have that representation, which could snowball, as you say. Having a person of color on the cover of Ski Magazine opens the eyes of a young person saying, hey, that's something that I can do with my life. And I know I've said this quote on the podcast before around diversity, but I was listening to Whoopi Goldberg, the famous actress. And when she was young, she was watching TV, and the woman that played an officer on Star Trek was a Black lady. And when she saw that, she just lost her mind. Like, oh my gosh, I could be on TV. And she yelled and told her family, and it was just a really big deal for her. And obviously precipitated in her being a television star. So that's a lot of random thoughts that might connect the dots in a few places, but that's sort of a little bit of how I feel and a little bit of how I see it. And I would be pumped to see resorts more involved in changing the culture to be more inviting and into supporting organizations or helping create organizations like Vamonos Outside that could focus on getting brown people into the mountains, because you're right, it's a numbers game, and we got to start playing those numbers.
There's one thing I feel a little bit differently on. Like, I don't think the culture there are not being welcoming enough. I don't think that's stopping people from the sport, because I think as humans, if I come to your house for dinner, mm-hmm. and your rules are to take off your shoes and you're going to play your music, I'm going to take off my shoes and I'm going to listen to your music. Uh-huh. Right. So when you come to this ski resort, you're coming to a new adventure. You're going to go to Disneyland, and they haven't changed the shows or the characters to be more inclusive. Like, you're going there for a different experience. It's like traveling the world. You're getting a different culture. So I don't think that is the barrier. I think one of my favorite things is, when I get on the chairlift or something, or somebody I haven't skied with before, people are always like, where are you from? Uh-huh. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, I'm from Truckee. No, where are you really from? Oh, I grew up in the Bay Area. Oh, no, where? Oh, wait, hang on. My father's Jamaican.
Oh,
So
and that's
and
a
then
little
I'm
bit.
like,
That's some
oh, that
othering.
makes sense.
Yeah, and that's some othering right there, right?
Yeah. And so I love that we still that's still a thing. Here we are in 2020, 3. Yeah, 2023, we've all traveled the world. We're a mixing pot here. And still, because of ski, I still ski with boomers, and that's a real boomer question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That isn't a question that's coming from our generation because we're all mixed together now. But I mean, I think that question is hilarious, and they'll keep going until until I say, "Oh, my father's Jamaican."
Well, and what they're doing is saying, "Why is the color of your skin different?"
Yeah.
and that's kind of heavy, and that's othering, and that's exclusive.
Yeah, I don't know. I
And,
find it hilarious.
well, and I get that too, because sometimes that,
Especially once I kind of figure that they're onto it, that I just start saying all the places that I've lived. Oh well, I did grow up here,
but I am curious about that. Have you experienced exclusion or bad vibes or any kind of racism when in the mountains?
Absolutely, I haven't personally. And again, I think it's because if you show up here to Palisades, Tahoe, well, I guess that culture has kind of changed now. But if you showed up here and you were a gaper, I think you got just as many looks. Somebody who has their goggles on backwards, or their power straps, dragging with their skis carried upside down, that person is going to get judged way more than I am going to get judged walking through there of color. Now, is it going to be? Are we going to have racial profiling or stigmatism added if that person now was of color? I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be harder to be that gaper if you were of color. But for me personally, I never had to experience that because, unfortunately, I was good at skiing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it goes back to what I said. This picture, once I put on the helmet, and once things, then I'm going to get recognized for my skiing, not for the way, not for what my skin color is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and most people probably know gaper, but gaper is a slang term that means, a beginner, essentially, somebody who's not experienced.
yeah.
In surfing, they say kook, right? And so it's like basically somebody who is new to the sport and probably doing lots of mistakes. But
they're not doing mistakes. They're just not doing the status quo. So if you carry your skis with the tips pointing towards the ground, is that the wrong way to carry them? I mean, is it really? Does it matter how
true.
I carry my skis?
That's true.
I think there's a really funny YouTube video that goes over all the different ways of carrying skis.
Yes, the Texas handbag. And
yeah. So I mean, is there really any wrong way to carry the skis? But you definitely get judged for that. Or if you have a gap between your helmet and your goggles, I mean,
gaper gap.
This is how catty we are as skiers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you for going through some of the diversity stuff. It is so complex, and there aren't any clear answers, but we've got to do better.
I think we could step away. You could pull diversity out of it, but how do we grow this sport now of skiing?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like how I feel like we're at kind of a critical mass here of skiing. How do we grow this sport now?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts? And let's just for this discussion here, let's just take diversity out of it.
That is really a challenging thing, and I think how skiing and snowboarding have backed themselves into a corner is the price, right? And so the price has become such an exclusive thing. It's not cheap to, skis are $1,000. And a ski pass is another $1,000. And so how many people have $2,000 to throw at a sport when you could just play basketball and you need like a $15 Spalding and you're playing ball, right? Because the infrastructure is there, it's free, it's public, and it's kind of everywhere, especially if you live in any kind of a city or town. But that's a really tough one. And just say, how do we get more people? Because the truth is, the population of the United States has gone up significantly, since the 1950s when, essentially ski resorts started showing up. But in that time, the percentage of that population, well, let's just say the amount of people skiing has really stayed flat. So if the population is going up, but the amount of people skiing stays flat, we're essentially losing people because we should be mirroring, to stay truly flat percentage-wise, we'd be mirroring the population growth. So it is tough, but I do wonder if I'm cheating here and bringing diversity back into this, but I do wonder if that's part of the problem, because when I was talking to Henry Rivers, he's always talking about in 2050, this nation is supposed to be less than 50% white. So there'll be more than half the nation at that point is forecast to be brown, people of color. And so if we aren't marketing to those folks well, then we're going to kill ourselves. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. So there really needs to be a really broad net cast. And it is, you got me stumped. It's so difficult because it's almost a way of asking, how can we make everybody in this country more wealthy? Because that seems to be what it takes to get into the
We turn on the money printer. That's easy.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts? Because how could we get, taking diversity out of it? How do we get more people skiing and riding?
I mean, I know this is like an absolute pipe dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to take this into like golf, right? Because I'm just beginning in golf. You have your elite courses here, right? Mm-hmm. Now I'm hacking at golf. I'm not going to go play an elite course. I can go play the public course that's very cheap. And until I hone my skills, I never need to go, do this very beautiful, big, beautiful course. So I personally feel like how this sport could grow is we need to somehow make it popular and make it cool to have these smaller resorts. So your Dodge Ridges, your things that right now we have this like Instagram tourism craze, right? So if you're not getting your photo at Palisades with your friends, you didn't go skiing this weekend. Right. And so I think if we could somehow introduce, because there's a level of skiers that could have just as much fun at Dodge Ridge as they are waiting in lines here and suffering through the 80-mile-an-hour winds to go ski the beginner terrain at the top of the mountain. They could have that amount of fun there. And so I think just if with the existing infrastructure, like somehow make it popular, make it cool that you're going to go to, a boutique little resort until you've honed your skills to go enjoy these big, massive resorts.
And I feel like the East Coast has done better with that, right? They have so many little tiny ski resorts, all over Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York. As so many of our skiers out in the West Coast come from the East Coast. And I think that is a huge, farm system that they have out there. They have these little resorts that are cheap and small and fun. It's great for getting kids going. And then at some age, when you feel big and strong, you can go to the bigger mountains, and try your, test your mettle out there. But I think you're right. I think that is true. If we could have more of these small little resorts that were affordable, maybe even co-ops, maybe even town owned, municipality owned, that could be a boon.
100% municipality. I think right now you have, David Wise, the Olympic medalist in freestyle.
It's amazing.
He's a big proponent of, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it's actually owned by the city of Reno.
Yes.
And so they do a really good job. They're busing kids up there, part of a PE program. And you could do like a learn to ski package for the year for like under $100.
Wow.
And
that's
so
great.
If other places could copy that model, and if the Forest Service could work with it, because it's not a large swath of land, it's not big mountains need to get bulldozed, but I think we could have tons of these little micro areas like that you could really grow the sport there. Because once these little kids here are introduced, in elementary school, and they're bussed up there, 2 or 3 times a week, and they learn how to ski at a young age, they're going to have that skill for life, and then they could, explore that later on. And so I think if we could somehow through, as much as I hate government, but we need we need something like that to kind of come in and like Parks and Rec. It needs to become like soccer fields are accessible to everyone. Why can't we have a small, not a mega resort? I understand that this needs to be ran hugely, but we need to have these small areas that are ran by local governments that have a barrier to entry that is accessible by everyone in the community.
I think I think that is a really terrific idea. The challenge is how do we do it, which we shouldn't get into. And I do
that's
know
where I leave. I give the idea. I don't tell you how to do it.
Well, and
Just
then
an idea.
And the scariest piece of this too is that it's the small places that have gone under, right? Over the years, there's so many abandoned ski resorts on the East Coast, Colorado, even some here in California, that have been walked away from because it's a tough model for profitability. Enter the Indy Pass. I'm really excited about what the Indy Pass has done for independent resorts, and we do have a podcast about that too with Doug Fish, the guy that founded that. So we do need to keep those small independent places rolling. And and even here in the town of Jackson, where I am right now in Wyoming, the town owns the little ski resort here, Snow King. So I don't know if you'll have a chance to ski here, but it's legit, man. I think it's the steepest per capita ski resort in the nation. It's tiny, straight up, and they just got a gondola, which is pretty cool.
So here's the thing: I've been to Jackson probably 7 times to only race at Snow King.
Okay, so you have skied. I was going to say,
I had Junior Olympics at Snow King when I was
okay.
13. We stayed right there at the little hotel right there at the base.
Oh,
so
great.
so I've been to Jackson 7 or 8 times and never made it out to the village.
Well, that's all about to change.
I know Snow King. And then I know Snow King. Well,
let's jump into Warren Miller. So you've been in Warren Miller's ski movie or ski movies. And I'm just so curious, what was your experience filming with Warren Miller like?
Well, I think filming with Warren Miller would go back with the people that I worked with on Warren Miller. So it'd be Tom Day and Keoki. Keoki was shooting stills when I shot with him. So, that's who I worked with. And Tom Day, at the utmost respect, a legendary cinematographer and also all around just legend of a human.
And I'm plugging the podcast too much, but he's been on our show too. Tom's amazing. Continue.
He also has the lap record on KT. I don't know if he told you.
Yeah, what is it? Like 50 or something ridiculous?
I think he did 62.
Oh my gosh. I don't actually love skiing with Tom because he skis so beautifully. And it's just like I've started looking at myself. I'm like, God, what's wrong with me? I'm like skiing like I've been in like a car accident. He is just the smoothest, most beautiful skier.
The first time I shot with Tom for Warren Miller Dynasty.
Okay.
I think we shot that in 2009. Would it have been maybe?
Okay.
But yeah, so Warren Miller Dynasty, he was still shooting on film back then.
Wow.
So to watch him lug around an old film camera and sit there with a bag and load film, and it's snowing, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta remember that we're in the middle of a blizzard and he has a black bag and he's in there loading film into the old film camera and out trudging through the powder and through the woods. That was an amazing experience. And he got, if you ever get to watch the Warren Miller Dynasty, there's the very opening shot is me. Before right when the movie starts, the big powder slash. Back then I was skiing on Atomics, but yeah, Tom shot that, and to work with him through that project was another, I'd say that, because Warren Miller had such an impact on my skiing as a youth to come full circle and to be able to be in the movie, was just another amazing experience. That and the Olympics and X Games are the top 3 for skiing.
Wow, man, that's so cool. And where did you guys film your Warren Miller movie?
So the first one, they both were Tahoe segments that I was in.
Nice.
So the first one we filmed a lot at Alpine Meadows. We filmed some at that point. Alpine Meadows was owned by JMA Ventures, and they also owned Homewood, so we shot a little bit there. And then back in 2018, I was in Warren Miller Line of Descent, and we shot that one at Palisades Tahoe. Well, back then it was Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows.
So cool, man. It's so cool that you're in 2, man. Congrats again. That's just, X Games, Olympics, Warren Miller, all these things that you've been looking at growing up, and then boom, you're there skiing next to Darren Rolfs. I love it. Warren Miller, I'm pretty sure, won't make a movie next season for the first time in 74 years. How does that make you feel?
I mean, kind of torn. I think every good thing has to come to an end, but I believe what I've heard is they're kind of restructuring and coming back for a 2-year project. I think the whole film and ski movie thing is probably getting really hard to be profitable. I'm
Oh, I'm
sure.
sure.
Digital content, the way that we're able to produce it now at such a rapid pace. If you don't see it that day, it's not current. And the excitement of going to watch, movies in the fall, I don't know if that's sort of slumped off. But for me, it used to always be that's the start of winter. When the movie premieres start, you
Yes.
go there, you watch it, you get super excited. Then, you get your tent sales, you get some new gear, and then it's time to go skiing. It was kind of the cue for winter. So, me personally, I haven't gone to a premiere in several years. So I'm probably the problem. I probably have to look within, because of my laziness and access to digital content. Now these great artists and great creators aren't getting compensated. So it's not really economically feasible.
There's a lot of competition from the internet and more. So yeah, it's a tough game. How are you involved with the ski industry right now?
So right now, currently, I've worked with Marker, Bocal, and Del Bello,
Nice.
and do their trade fairs and demo days and ski on the product. I love that. And then I also work with Palisades Tahoe, and so I work with their ski school, and I've been doing that since 2017 is when I started, and I started there with their North Face Guide program. And so you come to Palisades Tahoe, you get to ski with an Olympian.
So cool.
But I've really, put my heart and soul into it. The past 2 years, I've actually really committed and built up a really good client basis. And when you return, we just, usually just go out as a private lesson. And if you come to Palisades Tahoe and you don't want to wait in the lift lines, you can book me. You get to get 5 people to go with you, and we get to go explore a mountain. I started skiing there when I was 10. So I used to know what every tree branch looks like. Now they grew a little bit, so I have to recatalog. But I know the place fairly well, and I absolutely love it. It gets me out there. That's how I have 59 days. If I wasn't working with Palisades Tahoe right now, I don't think I'd probably ski probably less than half of that. I wouldn't go out there on a crowded weekend or when the conditions weren't ideal. So now it gets me out there, and I don't know, I just get so excited. It's like I roll out of bed and I'm booked for the day, and now it's like, here we go. I get to go there, and then instead of just being selfish and going and skiing the 3 runs that I want to ski every day, I think my favorite part is going there, and especially if I have people for multi days. If I have them, like, for example, I'm just finished up tomorrow. I have a family here. This is their 4th day.
Nice.
It's my favorite thing to do is like, how can I make this mountain seem completely different every day? How are we gonna start on a different lift? How are we gonna ride, a way that it's totally different? Like, for example, today, the mountain road was kind of crowded, and North Bowl was skiing really awesome. So I was doing a really big lap. We'd ski North Bowl, we'd get on Broken Arrow, we'd ski the nice cold snow on the backside of Broken Arrow, and then we'd traverse back across the front all the way back to the bottom of the head wall, and kind of do a big lap that way. But yeah, so I just love making the experience different every day for the guests, and seeing their smiles and their sense of accomplishment. Also teaching them how you can get into some of the, more aggressive terrain, the easier ways in. We don't have to go off the very top. We can sneak around the corner, and I love to get people through things that, they think are challenging, and show them that there's always 2 ways to split the pie.
Nooks, crannies, and hacks, man. That's what you're offering out there. And
Yeah.
I love that. And I will, co-deliver a Snowbrain's exclusive hack for Palisades Tahoe. Snowbrain's podcast, I guess, exclusive hack for Palisades Tahoe. On the days when the upper mountain's closed for wind and it's a powder day, I do this. You do it for a living. You get a guide or just a lesson, I guess, with Errol, and you cut the lines. And those are the days the lines are big, right? Because everybody is on 2 or 3 lifts instead of on 32 lifts. So those are the days the lines are quite bad, but those are the days that the skiing is exceptional. Those great storm days and those great California storm days. And if you have a lesson with Earl, you just cut the line and you just crank it. You can't really look anybody in the line in the eye. You keep your eyes down. But I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I've done that a handful of times and it is epic. It's so worth the money.
It is so worth it. You get to have you can have 5 people, so you can split it 5 ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's one flat rate. I believe it's like $10.50 for an all day and $6.40 for a half day. Yeah. So, if it's a storm day and the upper mountains closed, we get to go ski from 9 till noon. If you're fast and you're on it, we can get 12 laps. So you're gonna get 12 laps on KT. We're doing 4 per hour. You split $6.50 5 ways. It's a great way to really have fun. I mean, you're going to be on lap 3, by the time, if you didn't show up early, we'll finish our second lap and be getting in line when people that were out at the back of the line are just getting on the chair for the first time.
And you get to ski with Errol, so highly recommend it. Right?
And I'm not the only person, so you don't have to worry about getting there and finding me. This is available through Ski School. The product is limited. We don't have that many people that want to go ski KT straight every powder day. So you need to be early to it. It is somewhat hard. If you have a hard time getting through, I don't know if I should say this, but you could find me on Instagram. It's at Errol Kerr is my Instagram handle. You could find me, but the product isn't always available online because we don't have it staffed properly. The phones are sometimes hard to get through, but I'm really underselling this. It's an amazing experience,
and it's a bit of a hack, right? It's not really.
It is.
Public.
It is a hack,
so
and people don't really get it yet. That you don't have to wait in the lift line. So
this again, Snowbrains exclusive.
But again, if everybody does it, I guess then there'll be a line to wait in the line, right? Line to skip the line. Who said that? Somebody said that the other day. I was like, oh, there's a line to skip the line. Oh, Andy said that.
Yeah. Andy Hayes. Yeah, I saw that the other day. It was kind of busy in that line too. I was like, oh, it's busy, but that line's busy too.
Yeah.
It's really well managed. It's really well done. I've done it a handful of times. Highly recommended. Secret hack.
Yeah. Again, too, we also have another program. So that's a all-day private. We also have the North Face Guide program. So that one is $11.50 for an all day, but everybody in the class gets the North Face soft shell puffy.
Whoa.
So so there's
cool.
Good value in that.
Wow.
So you pay an extra $140 and everybody gets a soft shell puffy, and it's embroidered with Palisades Tahoe, and it says Mountain Guide on the shoulder. So you get a badge of honor that you got to skip the line for a day and have an amazing powder day.
That's badass. I like that. So what's next for you? What's next for you in your journey?
For me and my journey, well, right now it's golf.
Nice.
I want to become a low handicap golfer. That is going to be a long journey. And I'd say just I just really, really love where I'm at right now. I have an amazing girlfriend. I got an amazing job at Palisades Tahoe. Got a great group of people to work with there. The skiing's been so much fun. I've gotten back into shape, and let's see. In the summertime, I'm doing excavation, and I work with a friend that we used to race motocross with when I was younger. So it's just 2 of us. We just do residential stuff here in Tahoe. So cool. Drive an excavator in the morning, try to get to the golf course by 3:00, make sure I get in my 18 holes, and eat, sleep, and repeat. So I guess I'm just planning for early retirement.
It sounds like you're living the dream, man. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And so I'm so glad that you're drinking it in.
Yeah. I feel very blessed right now. I've gone through some hard times, and to be here where I am today, I feel very privileged and very honored.
All I can say is congratulations. Errol, that's all I got for you, man. Do you have anything else you'd like to share here at the end of the show?
No, thanks for staying to the end for those who listened. And if you guys are at Palisades Tahoe, you heard the hack. Look me up. We'll skip the lines. You'll get 12 runs on KT if you're very fast. We'll do 11 no matter what by lunchtime.
You heard it here first. I love it. Errol, it was so good talking with you, man. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of the night, and let's go skiing.
All right, let's do it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snowbrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and family, and please subscribe. To find out more about Snowbrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Snowbrains. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Brian Head Resort. Get free lodging this season at Brian Head Resort. Stay minutes from the slopes and wake up rested to ski Utah's famous powder. This deal won't last long. Book yours today at brianhead.com. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast was brought to you by 11-8. 11-8 was founded by professional skier Sarah Rundgren and professional mountain guide Jimmy Oden. They wanted to create the best ski gear. So in 2010, they founded 11-8, designed in Åre, Sweden, combining the free skier's playful spirit with the mountain guide's uncompromising attitude towards gear. Tested on the mountains of their doorstep, with decades of skiing and curiosity going into every stitch and detail. Find your favorites at 118.com. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast was edited by Jared White. Music by Chad Crouch. And I'm your host, producer, and creator, Miles Clark.